Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I want to talk about this formula which we have used often, accumulation for the sake of accumulation. What does it actually mean? Obviously, the formula actually comes from Marx, from his book on Capital. For example, he says somewhere in that book that accumulate that is Moses and prophets. So the accumulation for him is the essence of capitalism. And the dictionary meaning of accumulation is includes increase or growth in something. Quantity of something. Especially when it is continuous and repeated. So it's not just increase and growth which define accumulation, but that increase has to be continuous and has to be repeated. And by continuous we mean it is never ending. Or if there is a pause or an end, that is temporary. And it is repeated, so that process is repeated again and again. Okay, so that's the dictionary meaning of accumulation, or part of it. And the formula of, say, accumulation for the sake of accumulation means that you are not accumulating for the sake of, for example, fulfilling your needs, because needs are limited, and if accumulation is for the sake of accumulation, that will put limits on this accumulation. It would be limited by the existing needs and their satisfaction. For example, if it is connected to consumption, for example, it's only limited, even if large quantity can be consumed by human beings because their needs are limited. Then accumulation is not for the sake of accumulation, that is for the sake of consumption, for example, for the sake of satisfying our needs. So this accumulation is not for the sake of accumulation. It is limited by needs, it is limited by consumption. Accumulation become for the sake of accumulation when the sole purpose of increase or growth is to grow more. So you accumulate not because you want to satisfy your needs. You might need to channel your accumulation through that or justify your accumulation through that. But that's not the main purpose. The main purpose is not to satisfy needs. It is not to satisfy. It is not consumption. It's not even to, splendor or show your power or might, because all those things have limits. But these limits are transcended when accumulation itself becomes a purpose or the purpose. You are overwhelmed by this urge to increase something so that you can have more of that thing, or to grow something so you can grow more of that thing. That actual piling up of that end product becomes something you desire for its own sake. And in a sense, it's very irrational. And that irrationality is very clear if you study the process. And that irrationality, without that irrationality, a large number of people cannot actually be gripped by this desire or this urge to increase something or produce something for the sake of production, or for the sake of growth, or for the sake of increase. This formula of accumulation for the sake of accumulation can be expressed or understood by distinguishing between two different types of values which any economic activity aims to create or aims to generate. Okay, and these two types of values in themselves they have nothing to do with accumulation for the sake of accumulation. The first value is what we can call use value of something. For example, a use value of an apple is that it satisfies my hunger or thirst or something like that, or bread. Use value of chair is that I sit on it. Use value of table is that I use it to put my computer on it, or put my books on it, or write on it, or if it is a dining table, you eat on it. So these are all use values. So we produce different things because they have this use value, and this use value and its satisfaction satisfy human needs. And sometimes, those needs are essential needs, and sometimes those needs are more than essential. And you can call them desires. But if the process of production is based on or focused on use value, then you can't have accumulation for the sake of accumulation, because needs would be satisfied. Needs are limited, even or desires in the normal social circumstances are limited. You will need a process of production. You wouldn't need a process of accumulation, but that process would not be for the sake of accumulation. Okay. Another type of value is exchange value. And exchange value in itself is also not specific to accumulation for the sake of accumulation, or capitalism for that matter. Because exchange value is a mechanism through which different human societies and groups exchange different things which have use value because you might have something which others don't, and others might have something which you don't. So you use the process of exchange to exchange things which you don't need and others need, and receive things which you need but you don't have them. So for example, I have apples, I have bread, but I have apples and bread which are more than what I need. But I don't have milk, for example. So I exchange some of apples or bread and give it to people who don't have bread, for example, or don't have enough bread. And in exchange, they give me milk, for example. And if I have more apples and more bread than they have milk, I'll end up having more of both. But since our needs are limited, and in the absence of any irrational motives, we won't be. And the things like apple and bread, there's only limited. They only have limited potential to be, accumulated and to be hoarded, etc. So this is exchange value. The purpose of exchange value in a non-capitalist system is to serve use value and satisfy mutual human needs, consumption, subsistence. Now, in order for accumulation to become accumulation for the sake of accumulation, what is needed is, among other things, is exchange value become or acquires primacy. And use value become subservient to the exchange value. So we can actually say that a non-capitalist system is a non-capitalist system is an economic system, any economic system, in which exchange value is an instrument and is subservient to use value. In such an economic system, you can't have accumulation for the sake of accumulation. At least not, it can't be a dominant mode of economic activity. But when exchange value become dominant and use value becomes subservient to that exchange value, and the economic activity is organized for the purpose of achieving continuous expansion in the volume of exchange value, then you say that economic activity is a capitalist economic activity. So in this sort of economic activity, the main purpose is continuous expansion in the volume of exchange value. and exchange value and use value becomes subservient to an instrument of exchange value, and use value become useful or of use only to the extent that it is helping you to increase the exchange value of anything. Now, these are two different types of system, and these systems require different types of morality, different types of society. So it's not just it requires different type of personality, different type of social ties, and different type of state. One require capitalist personalities, society, and state, and the other requires non-capitalist personalities, society, and state. And no, before capitalism, all societies were non-capitalist. All traditional societies, whether Islamic, Christians, etc., etc., Buddhist, Hindu societies, they were all non-capitalist society. The purpose of economic activity was to fulfill use value, and exchange value was subservient to that use value. But when exchange value and its continuous expansion becomes the purpose, then we say that we have a system which is geared toward accumulation for the sake of accumulation. And that system, in order to sustain itself, require the creation and recreation of a specific type of personality, a specific type of society, and a specific type of state. And in order to universalize the type of economy in which exchange value and its expansion is the dominant theme, we need what is required is the universalization of two types of values, or non-values for that matter. One is greed. Without greed and without avarice and its universal domination or universal dominance or acceptability, you can't have a system in which a lot of people make it the purpose of their life or dedicate their life to increase or accumulate for the sake of accumulation. So you need a lot of people who are gripped by greed and avarice. That's the first main value. And the second important value, or non-value for that matter, which you need is which you need in order to create a system in which a lot of people are dedicated to the continuous expansion of the circuit of accumulation, is competition. It's not enough that people are greedy. Okay, even when people are greedy, their greed might have limits. So you need to basically propel this greed. You require, it is required that this greed is continuously given fuel and that is done through competition, or what in Islamic term we call hasad. And Christians used to call it covetousness. It's also called envy. That's what hasad is. And dictionary meaning of covetousness is the feeling of having a strong desire for the things that others have. So you want to have what others have, but you want the feeling of having a strong desire for the things that others have and more than them. So first you have greed. Okay, but what gives this greed a continuous fire, provides the continuous growth mechanism within individual, is this covetousness, this envy, this competition. So these people who are greedy and avaricious in a society dedicated to accumulation for the sake of accumulation have this continuous urge to acquire more than others. And when these mechanisms are institutionalized, this process of competition, then you have some universalization of an economic system which is based on accumulation for the sake of accumulation. And only in an environment in which greed is accepted as a normal human value, and competition and envy and covetousness is considered normal human characteristics and a rational human characteristic, only in those social settings, you can have a dominance of a system which is geared towards accumulation for the sake of accumulation. And you need to always recreate that system, because humans, at least not enough of them, enough number of them, humans, not enough numbers of them, naturally would would be avaricious or greedy to the extent that is required by this system, which requires that a lot of people dedicate their life to just making more and more and more. And not just that, but consider it as rational activity or rational pursuit. And in the Quran al-Azim, this connection between avarice, envy, and accumulation for the sake of accumulation is clearly commented upon. And I will finish this with considering two places where Quran does that. There are these two very short surahs which lay bare the essence of this search for more. accumulation for the sake of accumulation. First is the Surah Humaza, which is 104th Surah. Wailul likulli humazatil lumaza. Woe to every backbiter, slanderer. Another translation is woe to every fault-finding backbiter. And the characteristic of this backbiter and slanderer, which Quran focuses on, is alladhi jama'a ma'alam wa'addada, who amasses wealth greedily. So he accumulates jama. Jama means to accumulate. And wa'addada, and counts it repeatedly. So this formula, alladhi jama'a ma'alam wa'addada, it captures actually, because he who amasses riches and then counts them over and over. That's his basic ambition in life. And this person basically embodies this search for accumulation for the sake of accumulation. And Quran captured this in these two words: Jama, accumulate, and Addada, he counts it over and over. And why does he do that? Because he has this wishful thinking, يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَ, thinking that their wealth will make them immortal. So the justification for this accumulation for the sake of accumulation is always overcoming the human limits. And one of the basic human limits is death. So another translation has it that woe to every fault-finding backbiter who amasses riches, counting them over and over, thinking they will make him live forever. That's his justification. يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَ. But Quran rejects that this is going to happen. Kalla, nay, not at all. لَيُنْبَذَنَّ فِي الْحُطَمَةِ. Such a person will certainly be tossed into the crusher. He will be crushed in this life and hereafter, in this life, under the weight of this irrational search for more and more. It will consume him from inside and out. And if enough people are, irrational enough to engage in this, then it will crush the whole societies and civilization as it is doing to our civilization. Kalla layumbazanna fil hutama. No, indeed, he will be thrust into the crusher. Wama adraka mal hutama. And what will make you realize what the crusher is? In this life, these crushers we are seeing, destruction of the nature, destruction of the environment, which is then, turning back on us and our civilization. So, and what will make you realize what the crusher is? What will explain to you what the crusher is? Narullahil Muqada. It is Allah's kindled fire. That's the fire of hell. And this fire in this world and hereafter, because the fire which is lit by greed and avarice, it's self-consuming fire. It consumes those who are greedy and avaricious and covetous, and through that it consumes or self-consumes the whole society as well. No, indeed, he will be thrust into the crusher. What will explain to you what the crusher is? It is God's fire made to blaze, which rises allati tattali'u ala al-afida, which rages over the hearts. That's why it's self-consuming fire. The fire of greed and the fire of avarice and the fire of covetousness, because You accumulate more and more, but your heart seeks for more, and you are never satisfied. And this fire of unsatisfaction burns you from inside and out, burns your surroundings because of this inner unsatisfaction as well. So it is God's fire made to blaze, which rises over people's heart. إنها عليهم مؤصدة في أمد ممددة. It will be sealed over them, tightly secured with long braces. In the other translation, it is God's fire made to blaze, which rises over people's heart. It closes on them in towering columns. So this is one of the surah, and the next one is the surah which actually can be translated as accumulation for the sake of accumulation, and that's the surah which is known as At-Takathur. So this one, as I said, is At-Takathur, the surah number 102, and this is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhaakum at-Takathur. Competition for more gains diverts you from Allah. And at-Takasur, as I said, means competing for more and more. The other translation has it, competing for more distracts you. Alhaakum at-Takasur hatta zurtumul maqabir, until you end up in your graves. So this competition for the sake of competition distracts you or diverts you from realizing your limitation. And it distracts you until you are into your graves. It distracts you into this irrational desire for more and more, so you can eternalize yourself and immortalize yourself, or overcome death. But obviously you aren't able to overcome death, and you realize it that only if you ever, when you are in your graves. And this is a simile not just for an individual life, but the life of civilization as well. So competing for more distracts you until you go into your graves. Kalla sawfa ta'lamun. But no, you will soon come to know. But then it will be too late, because you will come to know only when you see the reality of death. Summa kalla sawfa ta'lamun. Again, no, you will soon come to know. Kalla law ta'lamuna ilm al-yaqeen. Indeed, if you were to know your fate with certainty, you would have acted differently. If you had known that the death is your essence, you wouldn't have chosen this self-destructive path and self-deluded path of eternalizing yourself through competing for more and more, and then self-consuming yourself and your society into this useless pursuit, which eventually diverted you from realizing your life in this world according to your own nature. لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمَ. But you will surely see the hellfire. ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا عَيْنَ الْيَقِينِ. Again, you will surely see it with the eye of certainty. ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. Then on that day, you will definitely be questioned about your worldly pleasures and the worldly goods you were, trying to accumulate. The other translation as competing for more distracts you until you go into your graves. No, indeed, you will come to know. No, indeed, in the end, you will come to know. No, indeed, if only you knew for certain, you will most definitely see hellfire. Then you will see it with the eye of certainty. On that day, you will be asked about your pleasures, about the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which you ignored. And this is Imam Piqtal's translation. Al-Hakum Takasur, rivalry in worldly increase distracts you. So rivalry in worldly increase is basically a Takasur, translation of Takasur. It is basically the same as saying competition for the sake of competition. So competition for the sake of competition distracteth you from your realizing your mission in this world and your reality in this world, until ye come to the graves. Nay, but ye will come to know. Nay, but ye will come to know. Nay, would that ye knew now with a sure knowledge, for ye will behold hellfire. Aye, ye will behold it with sure vision, and then on that day you will be asked concerning pleasure. So just to go back to where we started, accumulation for the sake of accumulation is basically this search for worldly increase and competing for that. And the rationale for that is basically immortality or overcoming death, basically. A person thinks that through involving in this search for accumulation for the sake of accumulation, they will be able to live forever, or their civilization would be able to live forever, or their species would able to live forever and will be able to overcome their limits. Okay, so I think that's a good place to stop.